Good morning or afternoon and evening. I think it's afternoon for you all over in BST, but thank you for having me, and I'm excited to be here. I've got my big cup of coffee, and I am ready. So I wanted to really kind of challenge you all to rethink what engagement looks like in your classes. Obviously, with short, quick chats like this, we can't go overly in depth, but I also want to give you three different things that you could do like today if you wanted to, or tomorrow in your classes to start kind of boosting this. So real small actionable things. And that's where I see that driving engagement really makes the biggest difference. So let me grab this. All right, so I'm not overly used to Teams, so hopefully you all are seeing that. It looks like it's being shared.
We can see that, yeah.
Perfect. So with fostering student engagement, well, like I said, I want to challenge us to really rethink what engagement looks like, and remember that there's actually three different types of engagement that we see in the research. And we tend to focus on this behavioral one, where this is nodding your head along, this is asking questions, right? These are things that we can see. And we tend to really hone in on this behavioral realm and kind of forget about the other ones, especially when trying to determine whether our students are engaged or not. And this can be especially difficult in the online space, right? More magnified. We have like 140 plus people in the room, and if we just went by black boxes, we'd say, man, this is a really unengaged group. But my guess is a lot of you are probably tuned in very closely. And so we need to just kind of think about that. The other type is cognitive, and this is a very difficult one to see. This is a type of engagement that you really need to ask for evidence of if you're looking for it. And this is where it's very engaged, deep thinking about the content or processing of the content. This takes time. It usually doesn't happen extremely quickly, and it looks different for everyone. So a student who looks like they're zoning out in class, they might be zoning out, or they might be really thinking deeply about your content and what you are presenting them. And finally, there's emotional engagement. And this one is really kind of shown to precede the other two. And so emotional engagement is probably one of the most important ones, but this is basically where your content elicits some sort of emotional connection or emotional response to that student. And like I said, it drives the other one. So we need to think about the way that students are going to engage emotionally with our content as well. And when I say it drives the other ones, it can also shut them down. So if we're not careful also about like the approach of the emotional content that we're taking, it's something to think about. So now that we kind of have a different idea of what engagement might look like, what we actually see with the research is that there's a direct link between motivation and engagement. And when we think about this, we tend to start with engagement, right? So the title of my presentation is not motivating students, right? And if I said motivating students, you might think something different. But what we actually see is that motivation precedes and determines engagement in your class. And we tend to think of both of these things as these fixed personality traits. So that student is just a not very engaged student, or that student is highly motivated. And what we actually find is these are not fixed traits. These are easily influenced in the classroom, especially by you and the decisions you make as the instructor, from everything from the course design to material presentation to student-teacher interaction. There are tons of ways that you influence the motivation of your students. Now, absolutely, some of it falls on them and the choices they make, but if you're wanting to manipulate motivation to increase engagement, then there are things that we can do. And so I just kind of want us to think, right, engagement might look a little different. It's directly tied to motivation, and we as instructors can influence motivation within a class. And the way that I'm going to suggest is just one framework to do that. But it's one that I really believe that I try to make sure there is some aspect of in every course I do, in every class that I do. The 3 C's is what I call them, 3 C's of connection. This kind of comes from the Gallup-Purdue Index results. And I think if you can use these different types of connection, it's going to improve motivation in your students to engage with the class. So the first one of the 3 C's of connection is connecting with the course instructor. And this is simply your students need to connect with you. And what does that look like? There's a number of different things. My suggestion here for this one is often kind of, it seems so simple, but it's one of the simplest yet most powerful ways that I've seen people do this. And that's just simply using names accurately and often. So, right, if Paul was one of my students, anytime Paul mentions something or anytime I address Paul, I'm going to use his name. I'm going to say, hey, Paul, thank you for that suggestion, or that's a great point, Paul. Names have a lot of power. They drive connection between people, and using them accurately is really important there. So as I was coming up with this, I was trying to think of what are simple, fast ways that you could do today. And in terms of connecting with you, the course instructor, you using names accurately and granularly, I think is a really powerful way to do that. Obviously, there's a lot of other ways that you can drive connection between you and your students as well, but this is just one that I suggest maybe giving it a shot. The second connection is connecting with the content. And in working with faculty, I find that this is the one they struggle with the most. And I actually feel like this is one of the easiest ones, especially in today's modern day, everything at our fingertips type of society that we've got. And this is where you really want to drive a connection with the content. And one of the ways that I like to do this, it's a pretty simple assignment. You can do it early on. You can do it repeatedly throughout the semester. But this is some sort of personal network assignment. And what you can do, I've seen a lot of variations about this, but for example, I teach biomechanics, which is physics of human movement in kinesiology and exercise sports science. So I encourage students to create a learning network. And what I mean by that is they can do a couple of different options. I ask them to follow 5 to 10 accounts on social media and so what they turn in or what they share. Sometimes I do it as a collaborative Google Doc so they can inspire others. But they let us know who they followed and why. And that's really it. So now they have something related to my course coming up in their social media feeds throughout the course of the semester. And that's going to serve to inspire them to create intrigue or interest in different areas of the content and really kind of get their head thinking about our content. I didn't have to force them to connect with it. I let them completely drive who they choose to follow, as long as it's in the realm. Other ones that I've done include actually taking a course related question and asking an expert, swing for the fences, right? Maybe you're studying psychology and you want to ask Brene Brown a question. Send her an email. And you never know. You might get something back. But again, it's putting them and their name out there to someone who's a real person who has some sort of reputation in the field. And so I find that students actually really consider those things very in depth. Excuse me, I'm still waking up here. But they really put a lot of thought into those emails that they will send out, and they don't want to come across as ignorant or someone who's not knowledgeable. So I really like this kind of personal network or learning network type of assignment. It can fit in any class, and it's an easy one to implement. I've done it also where every week they add one account to follow and they share what account they follow. So there's a number of different ways to approach this. Finally, the third C here is connection with the community. And learning really is a community and group-based process in humans, and we learn best in community. And right, learning is full of failures and trials and all sorts of things. And so having support and camaraderie going through that is really important. And so this one is kind of a hard one for some people to wrap their heads around how to do. And one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do, especially in the online space, is casual connection is so important. And when we are in classes, this is the few minutes before you start your lecture, or as students are filtering into the class or waiting in the hallway, there's this opportunity for kind of unmoderated casual connection. And that is where friendships are made. That is where connections are created. That is where study groups are founded. And this can be hard to create online. And so what I suggest and what I've tried to do is, if you've got a discussion board forum, or you're using something like Slack or some sort of group messaging app, give them a space that is unmoderated. Obviously, in your syllabus or in your course expectations, you could set expectations around what's to happen in that group, but otherwise you stay out of it. And you let students know that is a protected space that they have. This can also be sending students to breakout rooms and not jumping in randomly, right? Because if you are hopping into breakout rooms at completely random options, it destroys that sense of security within that room. And so students aren't going to be as open with each other. And this can be scary, right? This can be like, ooh, giving up a piece of control. And I know as academics, we all like control. But this is one of the important things to do. Obviously, again, lots of ways to foster connection with community, just trying to give you one quick way to do that. And so, like I was saying, I wanted to keep this presentation short and quick. I know that we have just a few minutes and I wanted to leave room for questions, but I want to leave you all with my favorite quote related to teaching from Brené Brown, and that's, what we know matters, right? Our content is important, but who we are matters more. And who you are and the relationship you establish with your students is going to be the driver of engagement and going to be the driver of what they get out of your course. Thank you. Thank you. And if you have any questions, I have my contact info up on the screen there. Happy for you all to reach out. I can share these slides. It looks like some stuff was going over in the chat.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you so much. And what a brilliant way to end that final slide. Absolutely spot on. It's I hope you don't mind. I shared your YouTube channel in the chat.
Oh, perfect.
Dustin has got a lot of brilliant videos in there. I actually saw Dustin's video on engagement and students, and I just thought it's so good. We need to get Dustin on here. So I feel a bit bad for coercing Dustin into such an early start. But if I could be that coherent at 5 o'clock in the morning, I tell you what, I'd be fantastic. So